Hi, this is Mom. So I'm going to show you guys how to make rolls. Mommy's old rolls I made for many years. And you're always asking for Mom's rolls, so let me show you how I make them. So you can make them for yourself and for your own children. Okay, we're going to start with preparing the yeast. And if you really want it to rise, you can use 1 or 2 packs. It doesn't really matter. Let me get some scissors and open this. And I have the regular dry yeast. There's all kinds of yeast. You may want to choose your own. But I have the Fleischmann's dry yeast. You can use this. So we're going to put it in this little bowl. Clip it. And I'm just going to use 2 for extra strength. You don't have to. You can go according to another recipe if you want to. If you want to do it this way, you can do it this way. Okay, so we're going to put 2 packs of yeast. Then I'm going to use just a little warm water to make the yeast rise. Okay? Make sure the water's warm, not hot. You want it to be just lukewarm and not too cold. And then you're going to place the yeast near the stove or on the stove, near something warm, and just let it rise for a little while so that it doesn't take too many minutes for it to rise though. And you don't want that much of it, water. I have 2 packages, so I start like that. And you just sit it aside. Just sit it aside and let it rise. Don't even bother, just sit it there. And then what I do after that, I prepare my milk. I just turn it on and get the milk hot. And then once the milk is hot, I put it in my large mixing bowl, along with the shortening, the sugar, and the salt, and whatever else you want to put in there. A little lemon peel or orange peel if you want to grate that up in there, or you just want to have the plain rolls. So I'm going to put some butter in this dish, and sugar and salt. If you want your rolls to really be buttery, you can use primarily butter rather than shortening. So I'm going to use maybe a little bit of both. Stick of butter. I'm really going to use a stick and a half of butter to make it a little bit more buttery. And then I'm going to use just a little bit shortening. Not that much. You can measure to your own satisfaction. I would say maybe this much along with the butter. That's like a large big heaping tablespoon. Then I'm going to use, this is going to be a large measure of rolls here because I'm doing it for Easter holiday. It's going to be a lot of us there, so we need a lot. So I'm going to put a tablespoon, I'm going to put a tablespoon of salt because I'm going to put sugar in there also. See? Tablespoon. Excuse me 1 second. Alright, since I'm making so many rolls, what I'm going to do is, see, I don't measure anything. I just do it straight out of my head. I'm going to add a little bit more salt, maybe another teaspoon of salt, because I don't want it to be too bland. And yet, I'm going to put sugar in there to give it some sweetness. So let me get my sugar. Let me see. It's not that much in there. Put some more sugar in the dish. And actually, you could put about a 1/4 cup of sugar in here because there's a lot of rolls. Like I say, I don't really measure anything. So there's 1 tablespoon, 2 tablespoons, 3 tablespoons, and that's good. Now after I've done that, after the milk is nice and hot, I will put the milk in there and it will dissolve the butter, the sugar, the salt, and then once it cools off, then I will take the yeast, which is already rising, and I will put that in the mixture. And then I will set it aside and then I will let it rise. It's getting nice and hot. It's not quite hot enough yet. See the yeast rising? You can see it bubbling over. Go. Alright, the milk is hot now. It's not boiling. It's hot though. And I made it hot so that you can dissolve the butter, the sugar, and the salt. And once it all dissolves, then what you're going to do, you're going to add your yeast. But I'm going to wait and let this here cool off a little bit. I don't want to put the yeast in the hot milk. So I'm going to let it cool off just a little bit. But I'm going to wait until this is dissolved. The butter and the shortening. The sugar and the butter. And the salt. Then I will come back to this and put the yeast in, which will only take maybe 10 minutes for it to cool off. Alright, now I just put 4 cups of milk in there. And that's going to make about 3½ dozen rolls. Okay, so now I'm going to start off with about 4 cups of flour. Now this is not going to be all. I'm going to have to use some more as I begin to use it to get the consistency that I want. Because I want a nice soft dough. So I'm going to start with 4 cups of flour. And then I will stir it, making sure that the paste is nice and smooth. Don't let it get too lumpy. And then when it reaches a certain consistency, it don't have to be stiff, I will add 3 eggs. You don't want to put the eggs in there too soon. That's why I say I start with 4 cups of flour. As you can see now, I'm going to need much more. But before I get too far with that, I'm going to add the yeast. And if you notice, the yeast is nice and creamy. The consistency is very smooth. So I'm going to put this in the mix. Then I will just blend that together. Of course, I'm going to use more flour just to start with. I use 4 cups. Just to give you a good idea of how much flour you'll be using. But this is going to make a lot of rolls. If you want to make a loaf of bread, you can do that too. Alright, now I'm going to add 3 eggs. The eggs are beaten up. I don't want it to be lumpy, so I beat it up so they have almost watery. So it'll blend right in with the milk and the other mixture before you add more flour. So therefore I just take this, the whole eggs, 3 of them, and I just stir it nice and smooth. If you want to, you can use a hand blender. Just to save time, I'm just doing it manually, but you can use a hand blender and never blend it in and take all the lumps out of the flour that would be in there. But of course, I'm going to need more flours. I have another 4 cups of flour I'm going to use until I get the consistency that I want. And you little by little, not all at one time, because you want to get all the lumps out of there. Now, as you can see, the batter is beginning to thicken up some. So I'm going to have to add some more flour, because that's not near enough. Add the rest of the 4 cups. So right now that's 8 cups of flour I use. But you're going to have a lot of rolls. This is for a large family. This is for a large gathering. And this is for an Easter gathering of my family. And it's quite a few of us. And of course, as you can see, this is not thick enough. So we'll have to add another 2 cups to get this thickness that I want. This is going to be very good. It smells good, even though it's not baked. Alright, I'm going to add 2 more cups of flour. That's 10 cups altogether, because I want it to form a nice big heavy dough that I can handle with my hands. It's coming together very nicely. Blend this together. I add the rest of the 2 cups. It's beginning to form now a dough. Like I said before, I don't, necessarily measure things, but since this is such a large batch, I measure the flour out so you see about how much flour you're going to use. And I'm going to use another cup so I can form the dough and put it together and let it, that's about a cup. Might need another to give it so it won't be so sticky. You can just add until it gets to the point where you can roll it with your hand now. At this point, probably another cup. And you take your hands and get the consistency that you want. Then you're going to set it aside and let it rise double in size. And once this rises double in size, you push it down, all the way down flat again. And you can let it rise again, or if you want to, you can push it down flat and then get your pans ready and you can let it rise in the pan. Since we're going to fix it for dinner for Easter, I would just put it in pans and prepare it in the pans and let it rise the second time in pans. And once it rises in the pan, then I put it in the oven and bake it on 350. You see, now you're just getting the consistency that you want. And you could set this aside and just let it rise until it's double in size. It's going to rise almost to the top of this bowl. Okay. Now this is the consistency that I want the dough to be. Nice and soft, airy. And then what you do, just set it aside, cover it with a nice clean cloth, and let it sit here for about an hour, and it will double in size. And then you come back, flour your hands, push it down, and then like I said before, you can either make your rolls out, if you need it right away, and let it rise the second time in your pans, and then bake it. Okay. That's it for the rolls. Alright, Now the dough has risen. It's been about 2 hours rather than an hour and a half. It's been about 2 hours, and if you notice, it's double in size. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just push it down. And you can see now it's going down. I'm going to turn the dough over, and I will have to use a little bit more flour in my hand so it won't stick so badly. So I'm going to put the flour in here so I can just punch it down flat again, as flat as I can get it. I'm turning it, kneading the dough, what we call kneading the dough, kneading it down, pushing it down. Now, after I punch the dough down again, now what you could do, if you have, a time, you can let it rise again, or what I usually do is just put it in the pan and let it rise in the pan at maybe another half an hour, and then I just put it in the oven on 350 and start baking it. So what I'm going to do now, I'm not going to take time to roll out the dough, cut it with a cookie cutter. I'm going to do like my mother did. I'm just going to roll them out by hand and make them. So what I do, I just pick up a piece of dough, pinch it off, about the size of a biscuit. And then what I do is I have melted butter, and I just take this dough and just stick it in the butter, dip it in here, and then you just take it. If you want to, you can fold it over this way. So when it rises, it will be double, or you can just make a regular size biscuit. So you just keep pinching it off this way. Stick it in the butter. You can fold it over. Do it as you please. Sometimes you may want to make a croissant. You just sort of twist it. Okay, this is one I'm just going to make on a regular biscuit just to show you. And this is going to actually rise again in about half an hour, and you can just put it right in the oven. It makes about 3½ dozen rolls. And of course the butter just makes the rolls more buttery. And space the dough, the rolls apart. Not that much, because when they rise, really it doesn't matter if they rise and they be right together. It doesn't matter. So this is how we want to do this. So let's make the rolls nice and buttery. Butter inside, butter outside. And this is the way I make my dough. I don't cut it out. Just simply break it off and roll it out. And after I finish this, then I set them aside for about half an hour. And that's it. I bake it. Alright, I finished one pan of rolls. I'm going to set that aside now and start on another one. I think I have about, a dozen and a half in there. So you're going to have a good 3 dozen and a half. If you need more butter, just simply melt more butter and continue. And when I finish this here sheet of rolls, I start on another one. You can also make loaves of bread. This is much better than, and much quicker also than cutting and rolling them out and cutting them out. It's faster. And it's good to get your fingers dirty. And I hope you try this recipe. You will enjoy it. Later we'll come back to the finished product, and wish you could smell it and enjoy it. Alright, I finished the rolls. I managed to get a little bit more than I said. So that's good. So I'm going to let the rolls rise for another half an hour. Rather than punching them down again, I let them rise in the pan. And that way I put them in the oven, and the hot oven will do the rest. It will make them rise even more. And after that, it'll be done. So you have about 5 dozen rather than 3.5 dozen. I missed it a little bit, but that's good. Alright, so we'll see you later when the rolls are finished, and then we'll come back and I'll let you sample them. Alright, now that the rolls has risen, and I'm going to put them in the oven, bake them on 350 preheated oven, and bake them for about 20 minutes. Okay, we'll let those rise, bake for about 20 minutes, take them out, we'll sample them. Alright, so the rolls has been in the oven now 25 to 30 minutes. We're going to take the rolls out, and this is the finished product. Beautiful. Now while they're nice and hot, I'm going to sample one of those rolls and let you taste it. Okay, let me see. Nice. Look at that. Beautiful roll. So keep in mind, I put them in the pan and let them rise in the pan. Now, let's just, ooh, look at that. Just take a piece of butter. Ooh, it's hot. Taste it. Mmm. Delicious. Absolutely delicious. Crisp on the outside, moist inside. You have to try them. The recipe is great. You have to try it.